This video is going to be kind of a quick and dirty look at some of the more abstract mechanics, and I'll be trying to explain how to use some of the numbers involved in general PvP. This is going to be in respect to treating the game competitively for 1v1s, which I find to be fun. Even though most of what I say is going to be applicable to all level ranges, I'll be speaking mainly from the perspective of the 155 to 165 level range, because that range contains the most complex PvP from a competitive perspective. I will argue for that meta for as long as I continue to take in air. My spreadsheet contains information as to why I and many other PvP rats prefer that range over alternatives, and why I consider it to be simply more fun outside of competitive PvP as well. So if you're interested in looking at reasonings for why that information is available, and I'll put a link to that. So, before we can talk about much, I'm going to cover some groundwork. We need to talk about win conditions. So, basically, you win if your opponent hits 0 HP first. So you've got two dudes, okay? And both of you have HP. I'll put a stamina bar there. So both of the dudes have HP. And if you hit the other dude enough times with attacks, then their HP goes to 0 and they die. And that's that's really obvious. HP is very, very important as a mechanic. Just to keep track of. It's your most important resource. And it's for more than just the reason that you can take as many hits as your opponent, or more hits or fewer hits. Because there are certain things that having high HP or having comparable HP to your opponent gives you. It makes sure that you have all options available to you. So if you're considering the match just as one where you have 5 hits, your opponent has 5 hits, and the first one to get to 5 wins the match, you can sort of treat it like a trading contest. So maybe you or your opponent has a weapon that's a lot better at trading, like a katana of some kind, just something with a lot of counter damage. Then their win number might be 4 and yours is still 5, but you might still be able to pull it out, especially if your weapon is favored over theirs, if it has guaranteed punishes on the opponent's good attacks. In general, it's mostly easy for the player with the trade pressure to just force trades and win that way. And trades are fairly common for that reason. So if you go in for a hit and your opponent manages to know that you're going in for a hit, they have the choice to return that hit and force you to take 1/4 of your HP, whereas they only take 1/5, which is kind of the concept of trade pressure. What this gives us is that while having exactly that amount of HP more than your opponent is kind of negligible, you can fudge around it, and if your weapon has better attacks, and if it has guaranteed punishes, like I said, it can sort of get around and get more hits in on your opponent, and then they're in trouble because they're all the way down here, you know, all their HP's gone, and you still have the weapon with the better attacks. Let's just say that you're both at one hit. You know, you're both at one, and since you have the advantage for attacks, then you're favored to win. Obviously, that doesn't prevent your opponent from pulling out something like a dagger or like a rapier or something smaller that'll be, you know, easy to hit you, or I don't know, like Santier's spear, or just something that can deal 1 damage easily. That's where the concept of trading kind of like goes away. The first person to hit the other one wins. Usually though, that doesn't happen, and one player dies before you enter that situation. So they both have their HP back. You don't really have to be able to withstand the trade, like, and trade evenly with it. If you withstand reasonably, then you can still be said to have something called trade pressure. And trade pressure is just the idea that you can trade with your opponent and not lose the game soon. Because like the person with the, you know, the really big sword is going to be wanting to force trades. That was a really bad sword. So like he really wants to force trade, so he's going to be trying to get you to trade. And that's his trying face right there. And you're maybe not trying to trade. You're trying to be wary about where he attacks and where your opponent is, you know, trying to force these trades. But you should still be able to do it and not lose a huge amount of health. Because if you know, let's say you deal 1/16, or like, that's kind of an extreme example, but let's say you deal 5 and your opponent can kill you in like 2 hits. All of a sudden, you've lost the ability to even go in for an attack in most cases. You have to really like pay attention to what your approaches are and what your opponent can perceive about those approaches, and how they can respond. Like you rely on your opponent not to be able to trade with you if the match is one like this. And that can happen for a number of reasons. You know, you might have started with less HP, which is not advisable at all. You might have taken some hits earlier. The determining factor for most of this stuff is the weapon animations themselves. So like if they're using, you know, a really big sword that kills you in 1 hit, it doesn't really mean anything if it's so slow that you can just sort of you know, dodge it. You know, you react to everything that it does, and you have guaranteed punishes on everything that it does. You know, his enormous like fire sword isn't going to do anything because you can see it coming. You know, you're not stupid. You have eyes. You see it. I'll give you eyes lines here. This is you on the left, by the way. This is you. You are right here. This one. You're looking and you see the sword. You see the big fire sword. And you use your roll button to roll out of the way of the fire sword. I'll go into that in a little bit. Basically, what you want to do, and if you're familiar with like fighting games or anything like this, then you know what this means already. Basically what this is the animation for every attack in the game. So let's say I'm I'm attacking, so this is my attack animation, this whole thing. And then the gray arrow is just time moving forward, so that's... I've got startup, I've got active frames, which is when the weapon's going to be dealing damage. So like, if I'm in startup, the sword is going to be like swinging down, or like I'm flexing my arm and getting ready to swing the sword all the way. And then active is when the sword is, at full speed. I don't know why I drew it like that. And then the rest of the animation is recovery. That's when you run out of active frames and you're just sort of like left with the sword on the ground and you're like hunched over and grumpy because you just swung a sword and it was heavy. Just make it like that, like a sad sword. Afterwards you're free to do whatever you want. Something that we can do is recovery cancel, and that's going to look a lot like this. So let's say the brown line is where we recovery cancel. The rest of that animation becomes effective recovery. It's actually not the same as a true recovery. It's slightly different. So I'll give that a purple, because the only thing you're really able to do is roll during that recovery window. But still, that's basically the only thing you'd want to be doing out here as well, if your opponent's going to be attacking you. This utilizes weapon chaining, and it's also, I don't know if I've said it yet, but it's dirty. So you don't want to do it unless you're like, I don't know, pressed to it, or like your opponent's already tiers above you and you just want to put yourself on even footing. Otherwise though, RC brings shame to your family. Alright, since I mentioned it here, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about rolling next. It's definitely among the top 5 strongest mechanics in the game. Like, it's next to attacking in terms of strength, because what you get is you press one button and you just negate several frames of damage. Just holy shit, that's a lot of damage. So, no, I'm not supposed to roll there. Whoops. I think he was upset about me attacking him while he was buffing, actually. So what we're both doing here is rolling. And what I want to do is roll exactly when, oh god, his attack would otherwise hit me. Which means I'm trying to roll... Holy shit. Alright, cut the video. So what I want to do if my opponent is entering an attack animation is roll exactly here. I want to roll before their active frames start in a way that makes me unable to be hit during those active frames. And since I get like, I don't know, 12 iframes, it's usually quite easy. And so, depending on when I roll, if I roll too early, well, I intersect with that, those attack frames. So even though I rolled correctly in response, I still rolled too early and got hit anyway. So what I want to do is, again, only roll when I need to. It takes stamina to do it, it takes resources, and it repositions me in a way that I don't really have control over because I don't control when my opponent attacks. So it's not very advisable to like roll in prediction of something happening. So you don't want to try to predict that your opponent will be attacking. Although sometimes that's necessary, you have to predict that your opponent's going to be backstabbing you or using a dagger. And in some cases it can be wise to roll predictively forward in an aggressive way to make use of some rolling attacks. But most of the time you only want to roll if you're dodging an attack. Like this is a good example of how not to roll, because if I can, if I just keep attacking, eventually I'm going to hit him outside of those rolls. Yeah, that's it. Another concept in mitigating damage from your opponent is spacing, which also includes an opportunity to punish, inherent to spacing itself. Because what you do is you first of all need to know that there's space in between you and your opponent. So like, let's say I'm this far away, between here and the wall. I know that my opponent can't just press R1 and hit me, because the hand axe only goes so far. So I know that it will take some amount of time for them to walk towards me and then press R1 before I would need to roll. So I know that I have at least that much time to respond. And if I correctly walk in and out, or slightly away from where I know their attack has to hit. This is adorable, oh my god. Then I can, just sort of either walk backwards or sprint backwards, or even just sort of wiggle in and out of their range. I don't need to worry too much about these because they're daggers and I have poise, and they also don't do much damage at all. But again, just trying to demonstrate it. Come on. Let me space you. What I want to do is try to bait his attack. Our latency is way too bad for him to pull this off very well. It's also too bad for me to showcase correct spacing. What you saw there were mostly poise trades and just general punishes for different things. He didn't have any trading pressure on me, so nothing was keeping me from just walking forward and pressing R1. So I'll try to space something. Like even though daggers come up fairly quickly, because I had so many opportunities to just tank the hits and just attempt to trade, it means that I am more likely to get an amount of successful trades. I forgot to ring swap back. On top of not dealing very much damage, he also had very low HP, which meant that the hand axe wasn't too bad at dealing with him. Ah. It's that kind. So So right there, I spaced his running attack with my own by running backwards and doing a reverse running attack. Also making use of predictive attacking. Assuming that he will panic roll as soon as his hit stun ends, I press R2 to coincide with that timing. Since he has trade pressure on me, I can't simply walk forward and press R1. I have to at least try to threaten the range that he's in, or counter-threaten my own range. So right now we're just really simply forcing each other's rolls and trying to get the better of the other opponent. Yeah, I know that that's not a guaranteed parry, so I'm safe to follow up with the second R2. There's a lot of items. I really don't want to end the fight with a bow. I just want to use it to try to get him closer to me. In addition to there being, you know, a system that heavily favors trades and that heavily, you know, kind of skews the animation interactions to one which can end up trading very frequently. The game also utilizes different latency practices. Latency practices, like doctor practices. I'm fucking smart, okay? So I am actually a couple hundred milliseconds behind where I am on my screen, on his screen. So like, if I walk out of range like that, I can still be hit because where my hitbox is for him is actually slightly behind me in the past. ScottJund has a really good video about this that's been around since like, I don't know, 2014. Basically, you just get a feel for latency ranges. Ah! you end up getting a feel for latency ranges as you play the game. It's just something that you kind of have to practice. You get a better feel for where your shadow is for your opponent and where they're going to be attacking. Also, what this does is make it so that the correct timing for them to roll will always appear like they're rolling after my active frames in my attacks. So like, it might, well, let's see. It might appear like they're rolling out here instead of in here, because their you know, their ability to roll and their perception of me is completely separate for where I see them as, or where I see myself on my screen. So as long as I can see that I am attacking into their player model, I can threaten to deal damage. But if they're rolling on their end when they receive that damage, then they don't take it. Spells and weapons are the same thing, basically. Spells are just attacks. Like, you can avoid them in different ways. Usually walking to the side works, which is kind of funny to think about. Like that's a really good example of stuff that you can just miss out on if you don't know some of the more like some of the like entry-level arcane things to know about this game. Like the fact that you, when you lock off, move about 1.3 times faster than locked on. And that's been known for the entire life cycle of the game, basically. The optimal way to play, in fact, using that as a segue, the optimal way to play, I did not record that fight. The optimal way to play is always going to be utilizing lock-on to just use weapon tracking. Because you can see, like, whenever I attack, there's an amount of, like, lateral movement that my weapon attack allows. I can turn almost all the way around with this attack. You know, I can attack straight ahead, I can attack almost directly behind me. It's very forgiving in that way, and this is one of the weapons with the best lateral control. That is a guaranteed punish. You don't want to leave neutral with that. You don't want to leave neutral with that. What did you expect me to do there? Ah, that's okay. What I explained earlier was latency, and that's a necessary part of having any kind of PvP game, like over the internet. If there was a ds2 LAN someday, we'd be able to get away from it, but there's no ds2 LAN. The way that the game handles the netcode functions like that. It is consistent. Especially between connections, you can know how far away you are from your shadow with any other player, any single other player. Usually it'll be similar between countries, and you know, you'll have low latency with people in your continent. It's a lot like any other online game, but it doesn't have any geographical restrictions. The thing in the menu is kind of a lie. It only separates Japan from the rest of the world. So you can still end up fighting people who are way outside of your geographical region. So I'm going to demonstrate something here. I'll change to an unupgraded hand axe, and I'll show that what I can do is far less than like what he can do. So I can do running attacks. I have to like make sure that doesn't happen, because I lose so much of my HP as soon as he manages to land a trade, and all he has to do in order to like threaten to trade me is walk forward and press R1. It's much easier for him to do that than it is for me to try to get around it. Oh, okay. I can do fancy stuff like that, but if he saw that coming, he could have just turned around and pressed R1 where my model would have been. If he were locked off, this would be much easier for him. It should still be something that he can do. You know, if he's using the one-handed running attack, then Not looking good either. That was kind of a blind attack. But if you're rolling away from somebody, you want to wait for them to actually be attacking to roll. Well, sometimes it can like be something you just don't have the focus for. Like if you're thinking about something else and something catches you off guard, then you just don't think about when you roll. Or you don't have the ability to be prepared for it. You can't like maintain your prepared state forever. Like you can't live in a state of angst for when your opponent's going to attack. So returning to plus 10 hand X. Rolling predictively is always a bad thing. So I believe that should still be Varangian. No, that's Drake Keepers. Okay. Where are you going? Why are you going up there? I don't want to fight up there. I want to fight down here. That platform is tiny. I'm not doing that. Oh, he put his sword away, so I can keep him from rebuffing if I walk up there. Oh, he's gonna try to like... Actually... Okay. Now I'm ready. Menu swapping is going to always be an option. He's rolling immediately after hitstun, and he does that consistently, so I can consistently punish him rolling out of hitstun by doing this. Ah, iframes. My timing was off. We have quite a good connection. I expected him to be a bit more latent. Bye. Where are you going? What's gonna happen? He's only really got a couple options. He has to avoid all damage. And basically everything that I do deals damage to him. Obviously he could still try, but you know, at this point the chances that he wins are very slim. He has one good attack really against me, which is his one-handed R1. It does break my poise. I want to execute him. He has plenty of time to react to anything this weapon can do. Like that is above 250 milliseconds, and since the active frames have to be active on his end in order to hit him, like that was a good reaction, but it wasn't a reaction. I know that he did that predictively because I know that he has never reacted to anything in his life. That was mean of me to say. I'm sure that he has reflexes. Basically, there's no reason to roll if you're not rolling to avoid something or you know, rolling aggressively, trying to use a rolling attack. The things to keep track of as far as stat allocation is concerned. As with before, what you want to keep track of is trade pressure. So if you have 50 vigor, you have like the best amount of vigor, because it increases by 20 HP per level until here, and then it's only 5 HP afterwards, which is really not useful. It's not worth a stat point. But 50 vigor itself is it's very valuable to have, and it, like, there's no reason not to have it on a build because of what it does to your trade pressure. It makes sure that you can stomach a few mistakes. Endurance, I've already pre-leveled that up to 27, but it can be, you know, realistically anywhere between 20 and, like, I don't know, 70. Like, it doesn't matter too much what you put this as. 27 is it's just a comfortable minimum if you want to have 5 rolls with the 3rd dragon ring. Vitality, you just want to be able to hold everything. So, yeah, on a build with Flynn's ring, you might want this to be lower, or, you know, exactly at 14 or exactly at 9. But as long as you can carry everything, that is to say, everything that you carry weighs less than like 60% of what the equip load number is. And you can take out a calculator and figure that out if you want to, or you can just sort of wiggle it around for a while to understand how much you need. Strength and dexterity are not important at all. Like, you can have minimum stats for whatever weapon you want, and very few of them will actually be affected negatively by that. Or you'll do a bit less damage, but it's not going to be a significant amount. Like, having 30 less HP, or 20, is a lot. Like, it's a lot worse than having 1 less AR on a weapon. You're not going to attack somebody 30 times. You're going to attack them, you know, 7 or 8 in a match. And then adaptability and sometimes attunement. Adaptability is usually a necessary stat, and what you want to do with it is reach a breakpoint like 96 in agility, and that's one of the more important things to do. That the minimum that you want this to be at is 96, and the other breakpoints are at 99 and I believe 106. Yeah, and those are each breakpoints for the number of iframes that you have per roll, depending on the connectivity of you know, between you and your opponent. You might want more in there, but it's a pretty safe, like, it's just an easy investment, and it keeps your opponent from abusing you. 92 can be okay. Your timing has to be good, but that's alright. Like, that can be a lot of fun on better connections, but if the connection is a bit worse, then you might notice some rubber banding issues. You might also notice that you get backstabbed a lot more, because the number of iframes that you have in rolls affects how many tries your opponent gets to backstab you. And I can't really explain that in too much detail. So, like, right now I've got enough stats to wield the ice rapier, and I've got vigor, endurance, vitality, and like a really naked minimum for agility. If I really wanted to, I could strip some more endurance, go down to 20, which is a soft cap. I wouldn't recommend that, and I can then have 64 stats to put anywhere else, but I wouldn't you know, have anywhere else to put them, because you know, just made all of my stats dump stats. I guess I can drain that too. So that's 67, and this is a very strong build already because it can hold Ice Rapier, and that's really all it needs to do in order to be strong. Or like, you know, I'll go 20 and 22, and now I can hold Santier's Spear, and that's the weapon that I want to use, which is whatever. Or I want to go to 30 strength, and I don't care about dexterity at all, for some kind of great hammer. Or I can just do, you know, 30-30 or 40-30, and then I get a very good baseline for just using whatever weapons that I want. And then I can increase endurance, I can increase vitality as I go along. I definitely want to increase adaptability. Like, that would be an objective for me. And this is an acceptable build. Any allotment of those stats would be acceptable.
Now, go along on a journey without rest.
For everything below like the top PvP scene, the rest of the stats are just kind of negligible. You want to have 50 vigor, workable stamina, like 27 or higher, enough agility to reach one of the breakpoints. That's 96, 99, or 106. There might be one at 102 that I'm forgetting, but who really cares about 102? You want to have enough vit to hold everything. So like, I've got 22 vitality, which means Flynn's Ring is garbage now. So I'll swap that out. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I shouldn't have done that either. You could have punished that with a backstab. So there I rolled in aggressively, trying to get a backstab. Ooh. He still has stamina. What I'm doing whenever he rolls towards me, I know that he has to wait slightly to get complete tracking on his rolling attack. And so I can kind of, you know, walk off to the side and know that he's a little bit behind me. So like, he would have to wait just a fraction of a second more to initiate a rolling attack to hit me. So I can kind of safely move around him before I have to respond to the rolling attack. Because if he initiates it too soon, he just won't get the rolling attack tracking on it. I might demonstrate that, but that's just sort of that's just an extra treat from me to you. I guess I'll demonstrate fat rolling. You don't ever want to fat roll. Just don't do it. It's not good. It's never good. So, along with roll distance and obviously the amount of time the roll recovery takes, my stamina regeneration is a lot worse right now. See, it takes a lot longer to fill up that bar, whereas if I had, you know, a lot less weight, watch this. Takes less time. You can mitigate that with certain rings and certain equipment. Like, I guess you can eat grass if you want to. It prevents you from doing quick rolls, which is kind of an important tech in avoiding certain chains. Every time you roll, if your opponent predicts that you're rolling, and they can predict that you're rolling because they control when you roll, they can follow it and they get a backstab on you. They can punish your roll no matter what. So I'll try to, let me see if this guy will punish me. Oh, he's just going to cast Heavenly Thunder. You know, I'm over here and not over there. I guess there's no difference between having fat roll and normal roll if your opponent's just using sunlight spears or lightning spears. So far in this fight, it has not affected me at all. I panic rolled there. If he follows up, it will likely hit me. I just want you to attack. I want you to attack. Oh my god. Why did you rebuff? You don't need to. I'm one hit. Like that. There we go. Okay. I managed to coax this guy into punishing my fat roll. So what he needs to do is just keep attacking, and he can punish it. Good weapons usually have an option to punish fat rolls just in chains. Like if I do this and R2, I punish a fat roll. You know, I can chase it, R1, or, you know, just sort of telegraph roll, and then as they're fat rolling, I can just pull them in for a free backstab. What this is just a spacing visualization. Like, if I'm my opponent, then I know that I can stand outside this ring of item sacks. Without getting hit by the one-handed R1, right? Or the two-handed R1. And I could even, like, bring it in closer a little bit. Just slightly. But since that's the effective range that my opponent has, I know that I can stand right outside of these, and then if they enter that animation, then I can punish it with an attack of my own, or I can, you know, just sort of force them to roll. Also, I will add that if they're running, okay, I can, let's say, okay, so that goes out to like slightly further. I know that my range is, just imagine there's a second ring of like shields right there. I know that I can stay in between these two ranges because I know what the running attack animation looks like whenever he does it. So I can change my response depending on whether they're doing the running attack animation or the R1 animation. I know that I can stay far away enough to punish the R1, and if they do the running attack, I'll see it, and I'll be able to roll away. And that's just a like kind of a watered down example of how spacing can affect the game. You know, if your opponent is using their moves effectively, if they're being wise about when they attack, you're probably not going to have as clear-cut a match as one that gets decided by that. Like, I've just been using a hand axe this whole time, but I could be using whatever I want in my inventory. Like, as long as the weapon feels good to you, just I would say just use it. Like, just sort of just put it on. Like, the most important things that you can do is know how to roll. And maybe I can demonstrate that. Like, I'll just use a fist for now. Know, in general, like, how your opponent's gonna react. Like, he could have gone for a second R1 there and I would have been hit by it before I could backstab him. Whoop. He shouldn't have used his stamina like that. Oh, that's a good prediction. He knows that I'm trying to run around to his left to avoid the R1s. He's used to that. Oh. See, he knows he can just sort of stand in place and R1 me. Ooh. Yeah, I panic rolled there. My reaction times aren't that good today. But you can see I did a significant amount of his health. I'll do another fight trying to do that, trying to bare fist it, because I think it's important to demonstrate stuff like that. I think it's important to demonstrate that, like, even though you know that there are some weapons that are stronger than others, the game, like, the game is complex enough to feed decisions like that, where I'm just sort of walking to his left and hitting R1 and trying to just move around to the sides of where he can hit so that I can then break his poise. It would have been much easier for me if he didn't have poise on, so I could, you know, one-hand my hand, as weird as that sounds. But it does more poise damage if I do this, so that's why I'm two-handing it. You more or less just want to do what feels right. I'll put on a dress. Yeah. He took 50 damage from Chaos Blade there because I was in iframes when he hit me. Why did I just do that? The reason I put on the dress there is because I'm a tryhard. And it has high dark defense. So again, I know that he just sort of locks on and presses R1, so I can make gameplay decisions that that punish that specific strategy. I can just sort of sprint to his back and pivot backstab him, because he's giving me the opportunity to. He's making enough mistakes. Ah. Oh, okay. We experienced a bit of rubber banding there, otherwise I would have dodged that. Yeah, the R1s did me in there. My reflexes aren't terribly good today. Fine, I'll use the unupgraded hand axe. So you might have a few weapons ready to swap, depending on the matchup, or depending on what you just want to use for whatever fight. You might have offhands, you might have, I don't know, numbers of things set up. If you're having trouble fighting someone and they're using something that's like very strong, top tier, or whatever, just sort of pull out the Bident, I guess, and try to match. Because Bident is very strong. For general gameplay scaling and you know, leveling strength and dexterity specifically for damage isn't terribly important. Like it's very good in PvE. It's good in it's definitely good in PvP, but I would not worry about it unless you're at that like top level, because the difference is so small. and you may as well just have a wide base of weapons. I also want to touch on elemental infusions. They just do more damage in general. You can use them or not, but using them is usually just better. So I'd recommend to do it. I'm making all sorts of bad rolls tonight. That was an example of something that I could have gotten out of if I'd used quick rolling. There we go. That's what I've been trying to do. So that's another example of spacing. Like I walk backwards, he's trying to hit me, but I'm just out of reach, and then I turn around, predicting that he attacks. Because I outtrade him, or just because I threaten to kill him in one hit, in that case, it's a little bit safe for me to do that, because I either kill him in one hit, or I force him to roll. In which case, I don't lose anything, besides 30 HP, which is not a lot. Armor choice, like, it matters even less than weapon choice. For general gameplay at least. Because as strong as poise is for the game at a competitive level, as strong as poise is for the game at a competitive level, usually, like, your opponent just two-hands their weapon or puts on something slightly bigger. Do you think I was gonna roll when you... Do people fall for that? What? I'm pissed. GG. What else was I gonna say? The strength of elemental infusions makes elemental resistance a good build element aside with poise. So an optimal armor set would look like this. Let me find it. Here we go. You would have Havel's Gauntlets, leggings, Black Witch dress, and the Minotaur helmet, because this brings you to just under 100 poise, which is... It poises most of the good attacks in the game at least once, and has a decent amount of elemental resistances, Black Witch robe being the like best armor piece for elemental resistance. But you know, in general, it doesn't make much of a difference to do. Like, yeah, it is optimal, but it shouldn't really matter that much. Like, as long as you have the poise, then your build is basically the same. It looks like this guy's dropped a bunch of stuff that I don't want to pick up, because I know that you have to cheat to drop things here. I'm switching to a different infusion of Lost Sinner Sword because Velstad's armor has very high dark defense, and as I say that, you know, I'm running in and dying. I'll put my money where my mouth is. Hold on. Where's the Bident? Where are we? Here we go. So I'm at 50%. That's a pretty safe amount. And what I want to do is, depending on who my enemy is, I want to try to force trades. Oh, another aspect of armor selection is backstab protection. It's not actually that strong. Usually just do it if you're upset about getting backstabbed, and I guess it could be a point of concern if the connection is pretty bad, but at that point you may as well not try to kill that person anyway. Because if the connection is extremely bad, then it's probably just not worth the time to take the fight. Usually if it's not for that reason, is he like waiting for me to come and kill him? Usually backstab protection isn't very strong. The backstab mechanic as a punish is very niche, and it gets generally outclassed by just pressing R1. So like, yeah, I am punishing him by backstabbing, and it's rewarding me because I'm doing more damage. But I could just as easily maintain positioning, not sprint to his back, and just press R1. Since the game is more interesting while I have the backstab mechanic, I prefer to use it. Yeah, he ran out of options there. So it's up to me to just sort of press R1. If I can press R1, I should. And like being able to time it to where the end of my opponent's roll should be is a luxury. Because he can't start doing an attack that'll outtrade me because I'm at full health and he has nothing. He can't attack around my attack animations because I know when his hitstun ends, and I know that I can chain another attack. I have complete control over him if I put him in hitstun. You don't do that. Oh, I guess you do. Okay. Yeah. Magic usually ends that way. Long animations, at least. Forbidden Sun was something that could have punished me for going in like that. It could have outtraded me. But, I have the ability to, as soon as I see Forbidden Sun coming out, roll away. Since it doesn't follow the same mechanics as weapons do, it's less likely to trade. It can still trade, but it's less likely. Great Combustion isn't a good example of something that can trade very easily. He traded Outcry with me, which was my fault for not running in and attacking him. But, you know, in general, that shouldn't work. I know that that spell is 100% punishable. I messed up there. The rolling attack does a lot more poise damage than the standing R1s, and by not correctly assessing that, I let him get 3 hits on me. Or I let him get 1 hit on me and then not rolling, let him get the other 2. Because hitstun lasts until you roll out, usually. Your poise doesn't start regenerating, or something happens and you can't really end hitstun by spamming because your opponent can do the same thing and usually come out on top. As far as like weapon scaling and elemental damage is concerned, like you may as well use a Dark Pate Spear that does 60 more AR than this one. The numbers get a little bit more fuzzy because the way damage resistance is calculated for elemental is different than it is for physical, and physical damage is slightly more valuable in most scenarios, and it's much more valuable in competitive scenarios. And so physical scaling can become a very nice boon. Yeah, right there, I knew where my back would be on his end, so I wasn't afraid of getting backstabbed. Especially since I know that he's limited to waddling because he's locked on. And I know that he's generally going to move a bit slower. But unless you're fighting a cow witch, the damage doesn't change much. It's really slight increases and decreases. There's nuance in how much you do. If you're fighting a cow witch, your damage with an infused weapon will probably be like 10 to 15% less effective than with uninfused. If you end up fighting an opponent at a higher soul level, they will start taking a lot less elemental damage because of how damage resistance scales with soul level, and that's not something that you can really avoid. I'll probably wrap this video up after this fight. Ooh, he's got Stone Ring on. I can just walk outside of range too. Go Forbidden Sun afterwards. I'll just dodge him for a little while. I don't feel comfortable enough with my reflexes to dodge Rapier one-handed. So if he gets in range for that, I'll panic roll. But I feel comfortable enough to dodge whatever else. There we go. Ah, I should have quick rolled. For mouse and keyboard, which is what I'm using now, you have to disable double clicking in that menu that I just showed you. There's like a half-second delay that mouse inputs get because this setting is turned off instead of on for disabled. So you wanna have it on, and every time you start the game, you have to mouse over it again. So like, if I exit and come back, then I have to enter this menu, and it'll still say on, and I don't want to change it, but I just want to like highlight it in the menu, and then leave the menu, and then it'll be fine. So you can hear that it happens when I click, and not like half a second later. Because if I turn it off here, that's the difference in input and mouse click, or input and effect. Anyway, there's that. Oh, I forgot to talk about rings. You'll see me open up the menu a lot and do a bunch of weird rituals with my mouse and with the keyboard. Just know that whatever's going on in there, it's for the best. So like after I get hit, I lose HP, right? So life ring plus 3 adds what? 316 HP. So if I take 316 damage, then I can take life ring off and I won't lose any HP. Okay, well then I have a free ring slot. So I want to change life ring to whatever suits the situation best. Usually that's going to be simpletons, or like, I don't know, a flame quartz ring, thunder quartz ring, whatever my opponent's elemental infusion is. And I'll know because I see their weapon. Stone ring's usable. Blue tear stone and red tear stone. If I just want to swap the ring once and be done with it, you know, don't want to worry about swaps ever again, then swapping life ring to blue tear stone is the first swap that I'd do. Like, I would learn that first, and then move on to other ones, and, you know, try to do multiple in one fight. But that's going to give you the maximum amount of HP per fight, like effective HP and trading pressure. Besides life ring and blue tear stone, the other two, well, there's life ring, blue tear stone, and third dragon ring, which gives HP, stamina, and max equip load. It's about equivalent at this level to 20 levels, which is pretty good. Like 20 levels total is how much it nets. Ouch. So using it is basically usually a lot better. There are 3 main damage rings. Ring of Blades, Flynn's Ring, and Leo Ring. You should usually be using at least one of them, if not 2. If you can use 2, you should be using 2. That was a very intelligent decision. I shouldn't have had Stun Ring on, but I just sort of blind swapped it. So Ring of Blades plus 2 adds 50 AR, which is a huge amount of damage. If the weapon is physical. It's 25 if it's elemental, which is still a reasonable amount. That justifies a ring slot easily. It adds a huge amount of trade potential, and it's good. Okay, use it. Flynn's Ring adds 50. It doesn't care whether the weapon is elemental or not. It adds 50 physical damage, and it scales negatively with your equip load, so I wouldn't use it on this build because I've got too much vitality. doesn't know how well he spaced me there. It upsets me. GG. Leo Ring is the ring that adds counter damage to thrust attacks, which is... You don't need to really, like, pay attention too much. If you use a weapon that has thrust attacks, and they're good thrust attacks, then use Leo Ring. Like, I wouldn't use it with Zweihander or, like, a Chaos Blade. Some people might argue for it for Chaos Blade, but I wouldn't. I would use it on stuff like spears. Rapiers are good. Maybe longsword. You know, Black Flamestone. It's got slash and thrust, like 2 very good attacks. Or actually, I think it's just... No, it's 2, because both of the rolling attacks deal thrust. It's also the second, one of those, the 2-handed R2s deal thrust damage. You could argue for it, I think. You might not win the argument, but, like, you could do it. Holy shit. I wasn't even sure I was gonna do that running attack. Dude. If I was him, I'd go for another lucky parry. I'd go all 7s. Ah. It's not a huge amount of damage, but it's there. And like he doesn't have too much HP. So not a lot of what I'm doing can be mistakes. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to in this video. There's a lot more information out there about the game. I didn't touch on everything. I just sort of wanted to give a brief overview of what things, or like the things that affect the PvP the most that I think are kind of overlooked. Like I'm just sort of explaining some of the abstract mechanics and trying to give a brief overview of how to look at the numbers and which numbers to look at. And how to know if the numbers that you're looking at are right. Like, that wasn't a good idea. Those attacks are unparryable. And GG. Yeah, if there's no repercussions to walking forward and pressing R1, then I'm gonna do it. It's on him to know that that's what I can do and what I should do. Oof. I didn't trust my spacing, but I was fine. He knows what I'm trying to do. He out-traded me there, but he improperly judged the hit stun duration. So, I'm gonna just, like, take a look at that. So, like, you know, blah blah blah, attack animation. Start. Or I guess I started sooner. we'll just call the pink line the attack animation. And we both get cut short because of hitstun. So that's a direct line. I know that my hitstun duration lasts a lot longer than his does. So like I can guarantee that if I enter another attack animation, then I can beat his attack animation after my hitstun's done. So that's kind of how I flowcharted that engagement. But like this shouldn't have happened. We both made the decision to attack right here. And if he had known what I knew, then he would not have made that decision. This would not be a correct timeline for optimal play. But you know, sometimes it works. If I had done absolutely nothing, then that would have been a correct play. If I had just sort of stood there, then you know, that would have been correct for him to do. But since I did something, it wasn't correct. So I think that's gonna be it. Watch the Tobias VODs. Bye. Let me know if there's any like questions that I didn't get to. Or like, actually, instead of asking questions, just read the spreadsheet. It's got all the information that you could want. Well, it doesn't have all the information you could want, but like the spreadsheet and playing the game has all the information you could want. Those two things together are essential to learning the things that you want to know, instead of asking me questions. But also you can do it, but you should know that doing those two things is better than asking questions, because you can just do those two things and not ask questions. I'm done giving information, by the way. This is just the rest of this video is just me rambling. I won't stop rambling. This is a challenge to myself now. I have to do this or else I'm not a gamer anymore. I can't game. I'm gonna cut my hands off if I stop talking. That's fucking terrifying. Why did I say that? I'm gonna begin duel with Sam. And we're just gonna have a quiet duel. Actually, we're just gonna have a quiet duel. You know, I'm kind of resigned to my fate, honestly. I'm resigned to my fate. I'm gonna cut off my hands anyway. So I'm just gonna be nice and quiet. I forgot to mention that Simpleton's ring is good. So the rest of the video was not just rambling. I can't believe I hit that. It gives you 5 adaptability and your rolls become poofy. Poofy rolls are strong. That's all you need to know.